but just want you to know this is the way I built my layout. It's not the only way to build one, but this layout that I built this time I built it just about very similar to the one I had in Michigan. The procedures that I use for building my layout, I spent a lot of time before I built my first one going around visiting a lot of layouts and sitting down and talking to guys who have built layouts, one or two or three of them. And I put together kind of a booklet for myself, the things that they looked at, which made it much easier for myself. It was more or less things to do rather than wait to do them later and thinking ahead. So I had the fortune of when I moved this time, I bought myself a basement and I bought my wife a house. So I had a basement that I could do with as I darn well pleased this time. So I started out with this basement. I planned for the walls, the electrical needs for the layout room lighting, the storage and workshop areas, and an area for operations and visitors' comfort areas. Next one, number 2, Bob.
Getting there.
So now number 3, this right here shows the basement when I had first started on it, to the left-hand side and to the right-hand side. I defined what I could handle and went ahead and built the walls. The next page is where I finished out all the walls, did the electrical for the layout. Also in the process of doing this, I put in necessary electrical and lighting that in the event that someone ever wanted to change this back to a living area, the only thing they had to do was to take the layout out of the room, and it was just like any normal room. In the next page, this is the lighting. And as you can see, the lighting just does nothing more than light the interior of the room from the ceiling. And it provides what I feel as if adequate lighting. I've also got this on dimmers so that I can dim it down. The next area, this is just some photos of the shop area. It's an L-shaped shop. What you see there, I just set it up so that I could do the work in the layout room. Then the next thing was that consideration was the operator and visitor comfort areas. That right there is an area where I can have a table, my work desk, and an area for people to sit around, chairs, shoot the bull, whatever. And while the operations are going on, just people to come by and look at things and have a good talk. Next one, draw a layout plan. For those who are thinking about building a layout and have no idea of what they want to do, this is what I learned from all of them. Some of them had a detailed plan what they wanted to go by. Most of them did not. The only thing that they had was a room that they wanted to put a layout in. And what they did was they just defined what they could do. And the first thing most of them did was just get the main line, the yard, local tracks set up on a plan. That enabled them to go ahead and start building the layout. And once they started building the layout, then they could locate their towns, industries, and switching. They could do all those type of things. When I drew my layout plan, which you'll see in the next picture, but I set it up to where I put all of my information as I was building my layout, any changes or modifications or notes. If I didn't put them in a book, they were noted on the drawing so that I had something to go back to. You'll notice in our layout plan, I want to note this out. Areas for bridges and trestles. All of them told me, Murph, if you're going to build a layout, don't do it like I did. If you got trestles and bridges, put the trestles and bridges in ahead of time and then lay the track, because trying to put a bridge and a trestle in after you got the track laid is a pain in the butt. If you're going to do an incline, get your incline planned out ahead of time. So I planned out my incline to where it was 1.45 degree elevation all the way through when it goes to the coal mine. And I've also used on my layout what's called the flat tabletop. And there's only one area that's an open grid, and that's where the coal mine area is raised. You'll see that in the picture later on. The next page shows the drawing. It's not a very good drawing. If you saw it, it would even look worse than what it is right now, because I've made a lot of changes and a lot of modifications. But that's something that you want to be willing to do, is to make changes as you're going along. My drawing was nothing more than something to get me started and to kind of keep me on track on what I could and what I couldn't do. The next page, I've decided a layout height and the backdrop. Now I chose on this particular lake a height of 45 inches, and it goes from 45 to 46, but most of it's 45. My first layout, I paid attention to everybody else and built it at 36 inches high. Now the reason why I went to 45 inches, I'm 6'3" and a little bit. A 36-foot layout height for me, I've had a sore back ever since. So this one, I chose it for a height that's comfortable for me. So if somebody comes and it's too short, I've got stands for them to stand on, because I'm not going to bend over anymore. You'll notice I pre-painted all of the backdrops, the sky and the clouds, but I didn't put up any other details with the backdrop because I really didn't know exactly what they were going to be. So I've got the opportunity of just having the clouds and the sky out of the way. I don't have to worry about doing that later on. The next one is where you can see where I've painted the backdrop as far as the blue all the way around the room. That's just two areas. The next picture, those are the what you want to call all that is just pieces of cardboard that I ripped out, and I use those as stencil to paint the clouds. And the clouds are on the right hand side that are nothing more than using an airbrush with whites and grays and some tans and a little bit of blacks to make the clouds. The next one, this is the workbench structure. The workbench structure that I picked out was primarily, I did this in Michigan and did this one the same way, which is a cantilever style. And the reason for this is, for me, it's real easy to do. I started off with putting a ledger board all the way around the rooms. The ledger board is at the finished height of going around the room. And I only used legs where there were return loops that stuck out a little bit too far for a cantilever. The overall depth of my layout averages between 30 and 36 inches around the walls. And I've set it up to where all of any handling as far as doing switching operations and other major operations, handling rolling stock or whatever, is no more than a 24-inch reach around the room. Other reason for this particular type of bench work is it allows for easy wiring for DC and the DCC connections, fascia control panels, and future wiring needs. Don't have to worry about drilling any holes underneath anything to run wires through, because as you see in the next picture, it's all open, and that's the beginning of where I started with the ledger. And the next pictures will show you as we go along. The picture on the left-hand side and the picture on the right-hand side is the only area that will be the open grid areas where that's going to be raised. There will be an incline track that comes to that. You'll see that later in the pictures. But this open type structure allows easy access underneath to run all the wiring that's necessary for the layout. The next picture, when you're looking at that, that gives you an idea of looking at the clouds that were all the way around the room. And you can see there, that's I've got the two little areas that poke out from the bottom there. That's where my major part of my DCC electronics will be located. And all of the open area up underneath the tabletop, in between that and the tabletop, provides easy running of wires without having to do any additional drilling at all. The next page shows this is the major portion of the bench work completely done around the room. As you can see, there's a lot of open area underneath to do some electrical work. And the next page, that's just some of the primary electrical wiring that I did that's located underneath the layout. I've labeled everything as I go along, and I've put the same identification in my notebook. And I've also done it on the drawing so that I have two places to refer to. The next page just shows that panel in place, that it's for the DCC wiring of all of the track. I've got that set up, as I mentioned earlier, in 10 blocks, so that if I have in the 10 different blocks, if there's an area that's causing a problem, I can shut all the other blocks off, leave that block on, and troubleshoot. And if I've got a whole bunch of guys over and operating, if they have an engine jump the track, it won't interfere with the other blocks, so that everyone else can continue operating. The next page is the beginning of the installation of the tabletops. I lucked out on this real well. There was a guy I found out lived about 60 miles from here, and he was selling a whole bunch of 42-inch by 42-inch, half-inch plywood. And what I would have normally spent would have been well over a bunch of money, and I got all of this wood for my layout for a lousy stinking $50 and about $5, about 5 gallons of gas to go get it. The next picture shows all of it installed completely around the layout. And if you look around just underneath the top, all of that open area between the rail and the top, that's all of the open area that's under the layout that allows easy access for all of the wiring. And you'll notice in the second picture, the one on the right-hand side, those are just only two legs on that side that support the big turnaround to go around the layout. The next picture shows another portion of where there's a large run around were legs that were used also. The next page, then I went to what I picked out here. I was going to go with Homa soap, but the only Homa soap that I could find was in Lexington, which would have required two trips. And the Homa soap had got up to $44 a sheet. To me, that was ridiculous. When I bought it the first time, it was only $22 a sheet. So that meant in a little over 10 years, it had more than doubled. So I had talked to a guy in Michigan who had used this material right here. And this is just a 1/2-inch insulation board. I tell you what, it's lighter, much easier to cut, and it holds nails and everything else just as well as Homa soap does. I was very surprised at how well it it's working so far. So far, the only thing I can complain about is nothing. So far, I'm very happy with it. In the next pictures is where I finished it out, all of it all around the room. And then the next pictures will show where I painted everything just a basic muddy brown. The picture on the left-hand side, you can see where that is the open grid work area. That's going to be elevated for a mine. And up against the wall, there will be a tunnel that goes in through there. You can't see it very well in this picture, but there's an elevated portion of where the track is elevated coming up to that area there. And then I finished all of painting the muddy brown, the next picture, all the way around the room. And that completed the basic portion of building the layout. The next portion to me is something that somebody taught me that I needed to do. I didn't do it on my first layout, and I made damn sure I did it on this one. And I'm going to read it and put it between your ears. It's extremely helpful when laying out turnouts to avoid supports underneath if using tortoise or similar items or anything. So if you'll notice in the next pictures, there are potential, what I did was I marked out where every support was that was holding the 1/2-inch plywood up. So when I started doing the layout of track work, wherever there were turnouts, next picture, Bob. So wherever there was turnouts and wherever there was supports underneath, I could identify if there was a potential problem. If you look up there on the top right-hand side, right there, that turnout, there's a potential problem with me using a tortoise directly underneath. So I may have to adjust or do it something, some jury rigging to get that one to operate. If you look at the two turnouts on the left-hand side, those are completely free of any interference with the tortoise. The next page is something to think about. One of the guys that was in a group of guys that we had our operations every Tuesday, he was an artist, and his layout, if you ever saw it, is a piece of artistry. And something that he always preached about was, if on your layout, if you want to do something that's nice, you want to do something that's fancy, think about the major theme for your layout. Do you have something that you really like doing and you want to show off? And have you ever heard of the wow factor? I never understood what that meant, but then he said some things. What you do is you want to wow your friends when you have a chance with the things that you can do the best and some things that you want to show off. One of the things that I did was I took that to heart. The next picture, I wish it could be blown up. But when this picture is blown up, this is the very first thing that you saw when you walked into my layout room. This particular picture won me several awards, of which I'm very proud of. But in that picture right there is 7 years of work. And that was 7 hours, that was a lot of work that was done there. In there, you will see birds, you will see snakes, you will see owls, you will see rabbits, squirrels, butterflies, fish. You will see birds fighting. You will see all kinds of woodsy animals, dogs, cats, people, everything that I could possibly detail. And this right here was the main theme of my layout. Up on the right-hand side, you can't see it very well, above the tunnel, there is a house and a barn. When I was a little bitty guy, my mom and dad were in and out of divorce court all the time, and I used to stay with grandma and grandpa on their farm. on that farm right there, it was on top of a hill outside of Springfield, Kentucky, close to Lebanon Junction. We used to walk over the hill and sit on top of the hill, me and the little kid next door, and we would look out to the all of the tracks that were sorting tracks of all of the coal cars that would come in from various places and line up. And we could sit out there and watch all of those trains, those steam engines and all that smoke. We'd walk out there in the woods with our brown bags, our jars of freshly milked cows, and our mayonnaise jars and our peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And we'd sit out there for hours and watch it. To the left-hand side, it doesn't resemble what we could see, but on the left-hand side was a complete coaling operation, which is the theme and the basis for my layout. Between where we sat and where the coal operation was a large stream. So that's